All right. So super excited to have Jerome with us today. Thank you, Jerome, for being here and sharing your story and your wisdom with us. So Jerome's a personal friend of mine, and fun fact is Jerome was actually the very first person that helped us to form our nonprofit and to form Low Entropy, because at first it was just an idea. Actually, Matthew, myself, and some other friends, we had this idea of starting youth programs, and Jerome was in the youth space. And so we approached Jerome and picked his brain, and you gave us so much information and so much knowledge, and really appreciate you and super grateful for everything that you shared with us. So thank you for everything you've done, and looking forward to hearing you share some more today about your personal journey and everything that you've overcome to live the amazing life that you have now. So I will just pass it over to you.
Well, thank you. Can you hear me okay? I don't speak very loud, so I'm not sure. Cool. Awesome. All right. It's nice to see your organization come so far, because I remember that first meeting in the office years ago, and I've been watching you from afar. So it's nice to see it grow and get people involved in the great work that you're doing. So kudos to you for continuing it, growing it, and putting it in place for people to have a voice, have a place to share and have some thoughts and ideas and try to make a difference out there. So my voice is okay, right? So you can hear it okay? That's good. Okay, awesome. This is the first time I've spoken on the Zoom dynamic for since it was created, I guess. It's been out there. But I left social services in 2018, so it's been quite a while to be involved in all. So it's nice to get the invitation to and talk about a topic, obviously, that is dear to me and connected to me through my injury and being a para. So I'm hoping I can share some insight, and I like to have conversations. So please feel free throughout to just, shoot anything out there, add anything, or ask questions, or share your own wisdom. It's an exchange of ideas and exchange of information that really help. I've seen some of the bio stuff that you put up. So I just want to give you an idea where I am right now. I left the social services in 2018, and I went to my first love, which is racing and training horses. So that's what I've been doing for the last 3 years is racing, training, and I own parts and some of 5 different horses. So my days are spent shoveling manure, rolling in manure, talking to horses, and doing something that I really love to do. What's unique about it is that I'm the only person in a chair that trains and races horses, standardbred horses, which are the sulky horses. You see at Fraser Downs, if you watch, you'll see the sulky behind it. So, so adapting to that was really interesting back in the 80s. When I got hurt originally, I was racing horses as a young 20-year-old. And so that was excited me, obviously, and changed the way I had to look at the world and changed the way how I had to look at myself, which was probably more challenging than I thought it was going to be. So the last 3 years I've been doing this. I got hurt. My anniversary was last month. So it was 38 years ago that I was hurt in a water skiing accident on the Sacramento River in Sacramento. Unfortunately at the time, I was neck high in a lifestyle that brought those kind of choices in front of you that you don't make very well. And so climbing behind a speedboat and going 50 miles an hour down a river wasted was not the brightest decision that I've made. So the boat went left, I went straight, somersaulted me out and crashed into the rocks. the impact of hitting the rocks has broke my back. I spent 5 months, a little over 5 months in the hospital. I spent the first month or so in a coma. Obviously, you know, coming up and waking up to a whole new way of living was quite a freak out. What's unique? I mean, when you talked to me, briefly sent me that information about your talking about celebrating diversity, celebrating, you know, it took a while for me to celebrate it, but it's interesting. It only took me a few hours. I talk about it when I remember sitting in the hospital room and lying in the bed, and the doctor came in and said he had something to tell me, and I asked him to just say it, just say it, and he did. He said, "You'll never walk again." And I remember my mom was in there, my brother was in the room, and they started crying. We're like, "Oh, geez!" It was like you get this little chill go through your body. And I asked them to all just leave the room. So they left the room, and I stayed there for a good 3 hours, just staring out the window, thinking about everything. Everything just rushed through your head. You know, you're never prepared for this, right? It may be someone getting sick, or an injury, or, you know, something happens in your life that all of a sudden you're faced with, oh my God, what am I going to do? And so all these memories go through your head, all the things you used to do or maybe could do. What am I going to do? How am I going to do this? What's going to happen? And that went through my head for about just a little over 3 hours. So then I did the old buzzer thing, and in come the doctor again. And I said to him, I said, "Okay, what do I need to do?" And from that point on, I never looked back. I just didn't. I don't know why. I don't know what inside of me made me do that. I just did it. I just did it. So, you know, in the hospital, spending a lot of time was interesting. That when I finally was able to get out of bed and into my chair, the first day into my wheelchair, I was able to pop a wheelie and wheel around the ward. It was like I was meant to be in it. It was bizarre. But I was wheeling around the ward, and they were chasing me because I was going too fast. I was wheeling all over the place. My brother was in a chair, and he was chasing. We were goofing around. And when I went through the door and into another ward, I ended up seeing a lot of other people like me that were coming from injuries, that were in beds, that were in traction, and so on. And over the next few months, what I did was start to spend time wheeling over and meeting these people. And from over the next few months, I was changed to 2 different rooms. And in one room across from me was a gentleman by the name of Pat. And Pat today is, well, he's in his late 50s. I've known him for 38 years. I was just found out 2 weeks ago he was diagnosed with cancer. So, but when I met him, he was laying across from me, and we were toe to toe in the beds, and his mom and dad would come in every day and visit him. And Pat he broke his neck. He jumped into a pool and he hit the water the wrong way and broke his neck. He couldn't speak, couldn't move his head, there was nothing. So I would sit in my bed at night and blow up rubber gloves. And I would write, I would hit him on it, float over around his head. And he would spend time trying to blow him off. You'd hear him doing this. And I would just kind of needle him over and over day after day. And then I'd finally be able to go over and speak with him. He couldn't move, he couldn't speak. He would look at me through little mirror glasses. And I started to help him. Just started to get things for him, get a glass of water, get things like that. And that just progressed for me. As we got to know each other over the years, Pat was a motivator for me. He couldn't do very much. He couldn't hold a glass of water. Yet he would get up every day, get up every morning, and do what he needed to do. And that pushed me to do the same thing. So over 38 years, we've had some crazy adventures in our early 20s and 30s. And unfortunately, Pat developed cancer, diagnosed with cancer, and he's battling it right now. So I'm hoping that he's successful. It doesn't look good, but we keep in touch, and we talk a lot. I used to travel from BC to California 2 times a year just to hang out with him. So he's quite a remarkable man, a courageous man. So from that point, it was interesting for me to see how I needed to rely on people around me, which I never did before. I always kind of took care of myself. And that's one thing that we have a hard time doing, a lot of us. We tend to struggle with letting somebody in our life sometimes to help. For little things. It doesn't have to be big things, just little things. But I found that part of me opened up a lot, allowed, friends that I just met to do small things for me. And from there, it just pushed me more and more and more. Even in rehab, not drug rehab, but rehab in the bottom floor of the hospital where they teach you how to sit up, put your socks on, get dressed, all the things you used to do when you were 1, right? And 2, you had to figure out all this stuff. Now you're a kid again. And it was so weird to have to be taught to do all of that. But one thing, the physiotherapist, Kelsey, was a unique character. He was full of unique things and ideas, and he pushed you a lot. One thing he would do is take me outside in the evening, and we do curb jumping. So the curbs, side of the road, right? Well, in a wheelchair, you just can't wheel up and whatever. So what you had to do is practice taking a run at it, pop your front wheels up, hit your big wheels, and pop yourself up on the sidewalk. Well, needless to say, you ended up on your head a few times and broke a couple wheels and spokes and whatever else, but you learned how to pop up on a curb. So he would come in the room and say, okay, it's curb popping time. So we'd go out and curb jump. Near the last week or two, the biggest challenge was bar stool transfer. So he would take us down to a pub down the road, and the tall bar stools, the little round bar stools that are really, so he would say, if you could get from your chair to the bar stool without falling, I'd buy you a beer. Wrong bet, I like drinking. So that was it. First time I tried, I got in, got up, and I never fell over and hung onto that bar so I didn't fall down. But you had to figure all that out. He didn't tell you how to do it. You just had to figure it out. You had to figure out where to put your foot, how to balance yourself, how far do you bend over to swing your butt up to get it into the seat, to then grab the bar and then sit yourself up. And there you were, without teetering and then falling over, right? So it was pushing yourself, and it was trusting in yourself to be able to do those things. So those are the things that I learned early on through the hospital and the rehab journey that took me out into the world when I left the hospital. And that in itself was, at the time I was racing horses. My dad was there with a stable, but when I was getting released from the hospital, I had no money, no job. I was living in the United States. I'm a Canadian citizen. I had no place to live, and I wanted to stay in California. So I had to figure something out. So fortunately, I met this guy in the hospital, Barney, who was another friend who was a quad. On the same room. So actually, we started talking. Say, oh, I recognize you. But Barney helped me get to a place where I could make a little money, cash-wise, in Sacramento. But the other challenge I had was, where was I going to live? So I hooked up with a friend that had a small house in Eastern Sacramento. And he said, you're welcome to stay with me. So I had not seen this place. I had not known anything about it. I just thought, great, I get to go stay there. So my buddy drove my car to the hospital the day I was released. I drove a '69 Firebird. So what we did was, we piled everything into the car from my hospital room. I strapped the mattress to the roof of the car. We tied it all down. We drove from the hospital to the place that put hand controls on your car so you could drive. Sat in a coffee shop for 3 hours waiting for them to install it. When they installed it, my buddy got in the driver's side, I got in the passenger side, and we drove to a parking lot of a Safeway. And I got out of the car, got around, got into the driver's side, and I spent the next 2.5 hours driving in the parking lot, learning how to drive. That's how I ended up my first few hours out of the hospital. From there, we drove to my friend's house. Now, when I drove up to the house, I looked, and right away it had 5 steps to get into the house. What do you do? So we sat there, and in those days, back in the 80s, we would smoke one of those funny cigarettes and kind of chill out and sit back and kind of go, how are we going to do this? Well, the next door neighbor had a picket fence, a small little picket. Anyway, we ended up taking down half the picket fence and building a ramp into the house. So I was able to get into the house with a ramp that wasn't to code, of course. It was just nailed to the stairs. So I got into the house, and it was a really cool little house, little bungalow house. And I checked the bedroom out, everything is good. But the first place you check out when you move into a house is the bathroom. You can't get in the bathroom, you can't get in the house. Well, when I got to the bathroom door, it was too narrow. It was about 4 inches narrow. I couldn't get my chair in the bathroom door. So I had to figure out how to use the bathroom. So I went back to the picket fence, and we took a whole bunch of wood out back, and we built a 6-foot-long bench that stuck out of the bathroom. So I'd get on to the part that was stuck out of the bathroom, and I'd slide all the way into the bathroom, and I could swing either way, either the tub side or the toilet side or the sink side, to do what I needed to do, slide back out, get into my chair, and then go about my day. That was the first 2 days out of the hospital. So it's amazing to see what you're capable of doing when you're faced with something that you think that's just, you can't climb it, you can't get over it. And without friends around, I would never have done that. So that was my, just thinking back, it's been a long time since I talked about this, so it's kind of popping up, all these stories and all these things and all the trouble I got into. I can't tell those stories. But it spoke to the creativity a person has, to realize that everything you do is adapting to a world you don't fit in. It's you just don't fit in it. Still today, I don't fit. When you feel you don't fit, you're adapting everything you do to try to fit. I never realized how much I didn't fit until, friends say, let's go to so-and-so's house. Well, you can't get in. Let's go to this place. Well, you can't get in. All those things hit. And you have to adapt. Either friends will adapt for you and with you, or you have to. And over the last 38 years, I find that my patience is less now than it was when I was 25. So at 62, I am now. I don't have as much as I did when I was 25. Curb jumping, I don't do any more curb jumping. But I'm also I also have to kind of step back and be more creative in how I get into places. When we look at diversity and we look at accessibility, we look at Independence 92, in 1992, right? They had people from all over the world come to Vancouver and see, and Vancouver found out pretty fast how accessible or not accessible they were. And they found pretty quickly they weren't. I mean, it was just unbelievable when you had all these people in chairs come from all over the world and they couldn't get into places. They couldn't go around, they couldn't get around. So they realized really quickly that they weren't. So what were they going to do? And looking back then in 92 to today, we haven't progressed that much. And that's a huge barrier to people. As you know, some people you may know that, even trying to push a baby cart, you know, with your child in it somewhere. Trying to assist somebody else in a chair to go one place to another, your grandmother, your grandfather, whoever. We haven't progressed a lot. And that's unacceptable. You know, the disability population is increasing more and more and more each year. The age group is younger, more risk taking, more accidents, things like that come up. And the elder population is increasing, so more in chairs, walkers, so on, that can't physically get from one place to another. And we should be an inclusive society everywhere. Because by law, any federal, provincially funded resource has to be accessible. If you go to these places, you'll find that they're not. A lot of them aren't. Because people don't complain. People don't bring it up. When you have to go through, when I went to a restaurant in New West one day, I had to go through 2 other buildings, through the bathrooms, into a side door, across a little walkway to get into the pub. Couldn't get in the front door. So I had to go through 2 different buildings to get into one. Those kind of things. So it's frustrating to see today that BC isn't accessible as it should be, or Canada for that. So I think what we need to do, all of us, is every time we go somewhere is to take a mental picture of it. To find, if this isn't, ask, well, how come? Suggest. Whenever I go out, I always make suggestions. If I'm somewhere, you know, you go to a bathroom and the bathroom door opens in, but you put your chair in there, but you can't close the bathroom door. But it's accessible. Well, you can't close the door, so it's not accessible. You know, those little bathroom ones with the little button on them, you know. So we always carry screwdrivers with us and wrenches. So we end up renovating the bathroom while we're in it. We leave a note saying you're welcome, right? So now you can open the door out, wheel in, close the door. Simple things, little things that make a difference between somebody either going to the bathroom or not, right? So we always bring tools with us because you never know when you're going to use them. Those kind of things, accessibility wise, those barriers make you feel like you can't. But if you get creative and do things like that, or speak up and have friends with you who advocate, support, then things change, and it builds you, right? It just motivates you, and you feel part of, feel included, and that you can make a difference. And so I've been blessed. You know, I've got too many stories that I could tell, but you know, over the 38 years, I went from racing horses, getting hurt, to back racing horses. I traveled all over North America racing horses, New York, Florida, Quebec, California, for someone in a chair. I mean, I had to figure that out. When I came back to BC in 1990, I went back to college as a mature student at 30 years old. Within a year, I was president of the Douglas College Student Society. I didn't even know anything existed like a student society, but I was pretty outspoken, and you know, I liked new things. And next thing you know, I'm president of the Student Society. That was for 2 years, running an $8 million budget. Go figure, right? I was on an AIDS advisory committee appointed by the head of the Dean of Student Services in Calgary, committee looking at secondary education for AIDS education. So we flew across Canada to 5 different meetings to speak with educators and talk with educators about making this happen. 6 months before, I was shoveling horse manure in New York. So you kind of sit back and you go, wow, this is pretty cool, right? I can do this. I can actually do this, you know? I went there with only grade 11, and I ended up graduating with my child youth care. My first job was working drug treatment center for adolescents, which happened to have 2 floors and an elevator, so it worked out real well. Did that, worked with street outreach for the first couple years, and then got into school-based prevention. So I worked in the high schools in the Tri-City area, doing school-based prevention in all the schools, talking to kids about the drug stuff and educating and awareness. And during that time that I was working and growing professionally, personally, I got into wheelchair basketball, which was interesting, but it sure took a heck of a lot of work. I lasted about 2 years. I wasn't fast enough, so I let the other guys do that. Then I got into wheelchair tennis, which that was my sport. So I stayed there for 15 years, was on the Canadian national team for 10. Traveled all over the world playing tennis. I was so fortunate. And during that same time, I learned how to scuba dive. So the first time I remember sitting in a pool, put all the gear on, you go down the pool to see if you don't freak out. I couldn't, they had to come down and get me because I liked sitting down at the bottom of the pool and just looking. So I thought, this is real cool. I like this. And so I got up with just under 100 dives on my belt. So I did that. Then I got into road racing. I had a hand cycle for years. Then I started road racing. I won the Calgary, Seattle, and Vancouver marathons, at 35, 40 years old. And just loved it. Just pushed myself and kept pushing myself. And then as I got older, I tended to step back, and probably 2017 was the last time I played tennis. And then I got back into the horses about 5 years ago, and now I'm back training and racing horses. So it's been an interesting journey. But through that, you could never do it alone. That's a given. My family, I got 4 brothers, 1 older and 3 younger. Bless my mother, she passed away in 2011, but she raised all of us. Without my brothers, I wouldn't have been able to do things. I needed a ramp at my home. My brother came over and built it. I needed to do whatever. So family obviously was really key. And then, when you have family and friends that'll help you that much, it just builds you inside. The power of the human spirit is amazing until you really find that out when you're confronted with so much. And back in my days of the 20s and 30s, I was a cocaine junkie, and that didn't help. It took me till into my late 20s to get away from that. That's part of my story that I share, but it's something that there's a lot of pain and loss when you hold a friend dying in your hands, and you gotta shake your head and think, why are you doing this? It takes those kind of experiences to get you to step back and step away from that world. It's frightening at times. I was able to shake it, but still in the back of my head, it's all those memories. And Pat, my friend I mentioned earlier, he was in that world with me, and it cost us a lot. But we're looking back now. It's like I said, I'm 62 years old and stronger for it. I was able to get away from it. I was able to step into a world that accepted me to a degree anyway. When you're trying to fit into it, as I mentioned earlier, if you don't fit it, it's hard to stick a round peg into a square hole. You sand the square hole is the round one, and you make it fit. There's a lot of things that you can do. I remember the first time I felt different. I was about the first few weeks out of the hospital. I was driving my car, heading to the pub to meet some friends. And I was driving down the road, and this young lady pulled up beside me at a stoplight. And we looked over and kind of smiled and kept going down. Next, we looked over, we smiled, we kind of flirting with each other. And then the next light, I said, well, join me at the pub up the road. Gave her the name of the pub. She said, sure. So I got there before she did. I backed my car into the parking spot, opened my door, pulled my chair out, put it all together, climbed in my chair, and I wheeled around the front of my car, and she was just pulling in. And when she pulled in, she stopped. She looked at me. You could see her eyes just go up and down. She backed up and left. So I was like, okay, something's different. So that was the first time I realized things were going to be different. I was 24 years old, 2 weeks out of the hospital, and I knew that things were going to happen. Fortunately, it got better, so it was okay. But it's those kind of moments, right, that define us. How do you respond to it? It's not what happens to you, it's how you respond to what happens to you. So in that moment, I could have easily just said, to hell with it. I'm not going to bother. I'm not good enough, and so on. But it didn't take long for me to go, no, I'm good enough. I'm fine. And carried on. And fortunately, I've been lucky to meet some amazing people in my life, and that's a bonus. The only thing is you can't drink as much now because you start walking around. Get that one? Yeah, that's how you know I had too much to drink. He starts walking around, cut him off. I'm rambling on here. Does this make sense? Does this?
Yes, it does. And I don't know, for me, I'm super inspired because I couldn't imagine what it would be like to be in your position. And to see that, how you overcame it and how it didn't even, it took you 3 hours to basically have that shift in perspective and say, well, this is my life and I'm not going to look back, and then move forward accordingly. Just to hear the tenacity, the motivation, the dedication you had to just make it work. Like 2 days out of the hospital and you're already, building ramps for yourself so that you can make yourself fit into this world. I think it's incredible.
It was something that, again, we don't know how we can respond to these kind of life circumstances, right? We all have them, each of us. We all have challenges we have. We're done this meeting and you're back into life and you're trying to deal with whatever's come your way, and how do you respond to it? Well, again, it's learning that we have so much power within ourselves. It's allowing and giving us permission for that to step up and to fuel us. And to go, okay, I can try. At least you got to try. Yes, I fall, and yes, I fell. I remember going to a Pink Floyd concert in New York. Took these funny little pieces of paper before going, and things looked really interesting when I went. So we're inside the concert hall in New York, and my buddy, he comes over and grabs me, and I didn't know why he was grabbing me, but realized that I was trying to climb up the walls of inside the stadium because I wanted to ride the pink pigs that were flying around, the blow up pink pigs that used to, and I'm trying to climb up to go climb these pink pigs. So he grabs me and pulls me down and says, oh my gosh, we got to get out of here. So as we left the concert hall, it was huge. So they had the stairs that went down 3 flights of stairs, and then it had the big ramp, big round spiral ramp. And everybody took the spiral ramp. I couldn't get on it. So I took the stairs. And I think this is about a year out of the hospital. And I remember popping down, doing a wheelie and popping down the stairs. Boom, 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 boom. And I was doing really good until somebody came down and bumped me and lost my balance. And I actually took my chair. So I had to get help into my car, a chair in my car. I slept in the parking lot that night, and I drove from Jersey down to Delaware where I was racing horses. And I drove up to a welding shop and honked my horn for about 15 minutes. So the guy came out yelling at me to shut up. But I had to tell him I have a broken wheelchair. Can you weld it? So he said, well, leave it overnight. You can come get it tomorrow. I said, well, that's not going to happen. I can't, right? I need to get out of my car. So he was good enough to take it in. I spent 3.5 hours waiting in my car. He brought it out. It was welded together. It's aluminum, so it was harder to weld. Put it in my car, went to the track where my horses were sitting there waiting for me. And when I got into my chair, he had welded it crooked. So it was wobbling. So I had to wheel for the next 6 months in a bent, wobbled chair until I could get back to BC to get a new chair. I mean, it's those things that you have to kind of do, right? And I got a lot of those little stories, but in the moment, it was like, what am I going to do? And right away through my head, automatically now, even with my horses or anything that I do, I can start thinking ahead. I have to make a decision. I go into a pub, for example, I can scope where I can fit, where I can get through, where I need to go around the route I need to take immediately. It just happens. When something happens with my chair, it's like, okay, so what I need to do, I need to do this, I need to call this person, I need to go there, I can get this, I get this well there, I get this, and it's just done. It just comes. And that's through allowing yourself to have that happen. Instead of just going, oh, gee. They go, no, okay, what do I need to do? You ask yourself that question every time. What do I need to do? Every time you run into something, what do I need to do? It's amazing how things will start formulating in your head automatically. They just come and you go, oh, yeah, I didn't know. Oh, okay, I can do that. I can do this. And that's how I am now. Whenever I go anywhere, do anything, it's thinking about what do I need to do. If I can't get into a place or around a place, or even the barn area where I'm working with my horses, I clean stalls. So how do I clean a stall? How do I push a wheelbarrow? How do I do that? You know, it's not easy to do. You can't pick it up with two hands and go, because you need your hands to push the chair. So right away, it's like, okay, how do I do this? Well, I just set the little thingies on my feet. I strap bungee cord to my chair and I push, right? Or I ask somebody really nice to pick it up and dump it for me, you know, and then I'll move around. But those things happen right away. How do I get here? How do I do this? Even my horses, a lot of them, there's 3 of them that we raised, and they lower their head, put them in my lap. I can put the bridles on. I can do this kind of thing that you teach them. I work around them without any fear whatsoever. And they adapt to me, which is amazing to see how animals can sense difference and can adapt as well. And so, you know, I can put a lead rope in my mouth and just wheel and they'll follow me. Things like that. These are 1,200-pound animals, racehorses, athletes, right? That just wait for you and say good morning when you wheel down the shed road every morning. When you brush them and clean the feet and do all those things to them, they don't budge, they don't move. They just stand there and do what you need to do.
And Jerome, I've heard you say too that you being in a wheelchair has been actually a gift, because you have experienced things you otherwise never would have experienced. Can you talk a little bit about that?
When people ask me about it, I say it's been a gift because it's allowed me to experience the world in 2 different ways. So before I got hurt, I was an able-bodied person like yourself. I could stand up. I see the world from this view. When I got hurt, now I see the world from 4 feet tall instead of 6 feet tall. And it's a lot different from 4 feet tall than it is from 6 feet tall. So it was a gift to be able to provide me with that view. So it helped. I would have never done anything. I would have never been a scuba diver. Who knows? You know, I was so neck high in the drug world and that lifestyle that who knows if I would have made it. Who knows? Who knows? You can't guess, but knowing myself at that time, that if I didn't get hurt, I probably would have killed myself. Probably, who knows what would have happened. So it allowed me to do all the things that I mentioned earlier. I could, you know, racing, diving, tennis, all those things. Even meeting if I was still. So yeah, it's been a gift. It allowed me to look at the world in 2 different ways.
That's
and not very many people get that.
I love that. I love that. I'm going to hand over to Rachel. I see Rachel has her hand up.
Yes, yeah, commendable, Jerome. I'm just wondering how much of that, you said you took a lot of drugs before this happened. And what I see is inspiring, because it feels to me like you had to figure, nothing was taken for granted after that happened. And you were out of your head, because you had to figure out how to survive, how to get into the house, how to get into the bathroom. How much of that do you think kind of freed your mind to be able to experience everything you did in the circumstance you did?
drug stuff, as far as getting away from it, that was, yeah, the step away from it. It took me a while, though. It took me a few years to get away from the drug world. But as I started to cut back and stop, things like you mentioned, it freed up. It's things that I was using part of me that I didn't know I had, right? Because drugs will suppress a lot of that and only pick on certain parts of you. So it was interesting that as the less I did, the better my view widened, right? And so it allowed me to see more, do more, and challenge myself more to do that, which was
And it's like almost because you weren't occupied in your mind, you know, you were out there trying to figure things out, or you were focused on other people then, because we can get obsessive in our minds. And when we do that, that's the relief we want from drugs.
Yeah, oh, very much so. Yeah. For me, when I was using, it wasn't, for me, when I was using before I got hurt, simple, I just liked it. I didn't have there's nothing traumatic that happened to me prior to my injury that made me use. I just liked it. I enjoyed the lifestyle, the fast, quick. I mean, when you're buying drugs from somebody who played for the LA Dodgers and you're hanging out with celebrities in LA and you're doing things like that, it's fun. However, when you get past that, it's just you're just a drug user, and it overcomes and takes you. So yeah, you're right. It freed me up a lot. I think of all the stuff that I could have done prior to using it.
So Femi also has his hand up. Femi, did you want to comment on something? Are you frozen? Oh, I think he's frozen. Like Femi's not looking up. Why is he not looking up? Oh, he must be frozen. He's calling in from Nigeria, so there's sometimes internet connection issues. Does anyone else have any comments or questions that they want to bring forward? You have Rashida? Oh, you're muted, but hold up.
Okay.
I think Femi's back.
Is Femi's back? Let him go first.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Jerome. Nice and very inspiring story there. And at some point, I wanted to say you must be a superhuman being because I can't imagine you going through what you went through, and it just took you 3 hours to shake it off. I mean, some people, it takes a lifetime to wake up to that reality. First question, did you at some point ever imagine that someday you would walk again?
No.
Or you accepted from that very first day that this is the end of it? Okay, so what next? Was that it for you?
Yeah, no, that was it. Because the injury was a complete injury. There's nothing they could have done. I have what they call Lukey rods against my spine with wires. So it's, I got metal in my back.
Okay.
So there was nothing, I mean, there was some, you look way back, and even now they have those, in Seattle, they have these things where you strap onto your legs and you can stand up and you can walk, right? Well, this is really good. Well, if I wanted to go somewhere wearing that stuff, it would take me all day.
Yeah.
It's kind of like a friend of mine who's a double amputee. He lost his legs when he tried to jump on, he slipped underneath, and his legs. So he used to fit it with prosthetics so he could stand up. Problem is, every time that he would get bumped and fall over, he'd fall out of his legs and he couldn't get back in them. So he doesn't use them anymore. He uses them for the stuff, right? So there's opportunities out there. I think if they come up with stuff like that, then it'd be great for young kids, right? That get hurt. That's the thing that you focus on. Somebody who's young and can still grow and can still develop. That you hopefully come up with things that can help, right?
Okay. My second question would be, I have just two questions and then one opinion. My second question, was there anything in your childhood that influenced your way of thinking? Because it's so rare. that you will be this strong to more or less wake up to that reality in 3 hours, that this is it. You know, that's really, really huge, and a very short time for you to come to that reality. And for you to, I mean, get started learning how to drive just the same day you left hospital, that just makes you a superhuman being, because some other persons will still be ruminating with that reality that, look, is this really happening? But you weren't there. So what really, was it that you were just naturally strong, or there were people around you that were giving you positive vibes, or you actually encouraged yourself? How did it really happen? Because it's so rare to have someone have such huge, massive experience that changes the curve of your life, and you accept it, and you're like, okay, what's next?
There we go. Freeze it back. He'll come back in a minute. I can tell. Look at the look in his eyes. He'll be back.
Let's
There. All this. That's a good question. I haven't been asked that.
move on.
That's a good question. I think when I grew up, where I grew up, like you said, with 4 others, and I had my dad was a vagabond. He worked.
You thinking what your life would be if things were normal, or if
He's sticking. He'll come back. That's a good question. Like I said earlier, I haven't been asked that one. I think my family moved around a lot. My family, my dad, we never knew what he did half the time, honestly. I remember coming home from school one day, we had 6 horses in the field. I said, what are the horses doing there? What are we doing with horses? My dad said, we're getting into horse racing. And he was, at the time, he was selling snowmobiles and stuff at a place in Winnipeg that, I mean, he was always doing something. He was editor of a newspaper. We never knew. I remember at school, they would ask what your dad does for a living. I said, well, wait till I get home. I'll ask him, because it changes. So we moved around a lot. Eastern Canada a lot, Kenora, Ontario, Toronto. I mean, all over, we were uprooting and leaving. And I think that is part of something that stuck with me. I was able to uproot and go and adapt. I think looking back, as a young kid, you had to adapt. You're going to a new school, you're going to a new community, you're going to new friends, and all those things. And 4 brothers, all of us, 5 of us, doing the same thing. Until I think when I was quit school, I was grade 11, and went from Manitoba to BC. And that's how I got into the racing. I just hopped on a horse van, quit school, grabbed a backpack, and ended up in BC racing horses. So, I've always been kind of, okay, let's go and do it. And Mom supportive, gave me $50 and said, I'll see you soon, right? And that was about the end of it. And my brothers are all the same. We'd up and go. It was easy for us to say goodbye and say hello. And that kind of, I think that's a good question, because I think that part of that is still there, that when I got when I got hurt, it allowed me to continue to do that. Good question. I haven't had that one before.
Well, Rashida also has a question. I just do want to be cognizant of time. We got about 5 minutes left, so this will be the last question. Rashida?
So thank you, Jerome. I am just in awe of your mental strength. And my question to you, because I have personally battled cancer twice and lost a few body parts through that journey. So nothing like what you've been through. I'm just saying to myself, oh my God, I'm so thankful for all the good things and the blessings. My question to you is, it took you 3 hours to accept your situation. And through your journey, how do you get that mental strength to just keep going and going and going with all the battles?
That's one thing it's hard to answer, because I just don't know. not to say I don't have my days. You know, I think 2018, I'll be honest with you, 2018 is probably one of the roughest times for me. Harder than being hurt, what I had to go through in 2018. And that's why I left what I did, to be able to step away and hang out with my horses and kind of regroup before I decided just recently to, I took a job with Surrey School District. So I'm going back working youth worker, frontline with kids again. Something I did when I was in the 1990s. So I'm looking forward to that. So I have my moments, sure. But I think, my family, our genetics are pretty strong. The wisdom and courage of our elders is key. We forget to step back and look at our elders and where we come from. Because it's the wisdom of the elders that you bring forward to help you carry on a lot of the time. My grandfather passed away at 98, almost 100 years old. My grandmother was 96. She had 22 children. 19 lived, 2 died at stillbirth. She raised them through the Depression. 20 kids. How do you do that? Right? You just do it. Right? You just, and my grandfather, and my grandmother divorced. And my grandfather hooked up again with a nun who left a convent for him. How do you figure that out? She was 30 years his junior. And I remember hanging out with him in his 90s, just listening to the stories. And it's just like, whoa, So part of it is your family genetics. My family's a strong family. We're one of 50 to settle Montreal back in the day when you look at your history. So we were carpenters back then. Our family came from carpenters. Built the first grocery store in Montreal. So when you review your history, which I encourage everyone to do, and I'm sure some of you have already done that, when you come into those times, not only the strength that comes from in you has been instilled in you by your elders. It's been instilled in you by those before you. And this courage you have will be passed on to your children, if you have children, your friends, your young people that you connect with throughout your life, that they will draw from you. They will, whether you know it or not. Often wisdom we share with people is those informal connections, those informal conversations, those smiles, those hugs. So it comes from that. The strength that you have, Rashida, from facing cancer and saying, girlfriend ain't gonna let that kick my ass, right? So you get it done, and it just happens, right? You're like, whoa. And now you step back and you look back, and you should be extremely proud of yourself to go, yeah, girlfriend did it, right? I'm here, I win, right? And you carry forward and share that with those around you, because they need it. You need to soak that up. You need to share that stuff with everybody, like we're doing here today.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of sharing, Femi is now back with us. We do have 1 minute left before the top of the hour. So I know, Femi, we lost you there, and I think you have one more thing to say. So I don't know if you want to go ahead and say that. You're on mute right now, so you'd have to unmute.
Okay, I would love to, but I can see Nati's hands up. I think I would love to step down for her. So maybe the 1 minute she could take that. Nati?
Oh, Natalie?
Yes, Natalie.
Oh, I think she's shaking her head. No.
Yeah, technical area. Yeah. Go ahead, Femi.
Oh, nothing. Okay, thanks. I'm not sure where I got cut off, but what I want to say, closing words, is I'm inspired by your story. If there's anything I'm picking from this, is that I need to keep pushing myself as well. I mean, you are absolutely unstoppable in the affairs of life. Nothing can limit you. And that's one positive thing that is coming out strong. So I need to keep pushing myself, because I like putting things in perspective. What have I gained out of this? I've learned one thing: keep pushing myself, keep staying positive. Because when your friends keep saying, let's go to the pub and the rest, they really don't understand that you have challenges that wouldn't make it so easy for you to access some of these spaces. They just flow. And when they get there, they just walk in and they leave you out there, But it's enough to make you feel, why are these guys doing this to me? Why don't they realize I have this challenge and there's no way? But you don't get negative. about, situations or people. And that is why it means you can choose how you react, whether positive or negative, but you chose positive. And that's why you have these beautiful stories to tell. So we need to stay positive about life. And lastly, that you can be anything and achieve anything you set your mind to do. I'm scared of horses. I'm not sure, as tall as I am, I can even climb the horse without someone's help. So if you can do this that you're doing at the moment, then it means that, anybody can do anything, really. So I'm inspired, I'm touched. My question to you would be, in closing, looking at where you are now, because I see you as an adventurous person, what new adventure are you looking forward to in the next couple of years?
Going back into school, front line with the kids. It's been 20 years since I did that. I ran nonprofits, as Vanessa is aware of. I taught at Douglas College as an instructor, child and youth care program, things like that. But back one-to-one with the kids, ongoing every day, it's a kind of reliving another challenge that I'm looking forward to. Instead of it at 35, now I'm doing it at 62. So it'll be interesting that way, how they take me at this age. There's two things I want to just quickly respond to you, Femi, about your questions. Is there's the people that are around me. It's interesting when they invite me. I've had friends invite me to different things, and then when I get there, realize I can't get into it. It's because they don't see me as in a chair. They forget, because they see me, they don't see the chair, and that's unique. That's a blessing to have friends like that to go, yeah, come on over and go, oh shoot, right, you can't get in, right, because they don't think about it. The other thing is, one little skill that can help is scripting. You know what scripting is? What it is, it's kind of like taking Post-it notes and making little things to remind you of stuff and sticking them up all over the place. So, like when I play tennis, the last strap that I put on me when I was in my tennis chair had 3 words on it: be the ball, move, and snap. So when I would start my each point, I would look down, go be the ball. That means keep my eye on that ball. And then move, always be moving. Don't stay stationary, always be moving. And then snap was when I served, I had to snap my wrist. So every time I look down, I go, those 3 words. When I work with kids in the school, I would ask them to think what things you can motivate you, doing homework or trying to do a different behavior or things like that, and they put it in their locker. So every morning when they open their locker at school, there's their script. Okay, be positive, don't talk back, be focused, take time for myself, take a walk if I'm frustrated, things like that. So they would read it every morning. Every time they opened their locker, it was there. So have something on your bedroom door, the last door that you open before you leave your house. And it says it right there, and you just read your script and go out and power the day.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerome. There's a bunch of love for you in the comments there. Everybody thanking you and being super inspired. Got so much love for you, my brother. We really appreciate you.
It was really awesome. Nice. I'm looking forward to it. I'm just now decided to do my website again and put it back up. So get back into doing this kind of stuff. So stay tuned, stay connected. You can connect through Facebook and all that neat stuff that's out there. Please feel free to say hello and connect. And thank you again, Vanessa. Wonderful organization. Anything to help you guys rock and roll, just give me a shout.
Awesome. Thank you, Jerome. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.